All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Older Adults and Work in the 21st Century. I'm going to read an abbreviated version of this. So the baby boomers born during the years of 1946 to 1964 are changing our notions about aging and the traditional view of retirement. Due to medical advances and better self-care, we are experiencing a longevity revolution. People may live 30 plus years past the traditional retirement age of 62 to 65. This doesn't necessarily mean longer old age, but can be viewed as an extended middle stage of life. Middle age is now being viewed as 45 to 75 plus. These bonus years give us an opportunity to be more conscious and intentional in figuring out what's next. It's an opportunity to look at the various parts of your life and to puzzle out what's important to you. It's hard enough for individuals and can be more complicated if you're part of a couple and you can each have different values, goals, dreams, and timelines for the years ahead. All of this can be even more complicated if you've lost your job and don't want to be retired from your work life and trying to figure out what's next in your career life. Being retired from a job does not mean being retired from life. All right, I'm going to skip the next paragraph. Let me introduce Dorian here. So Dorian Mincer, MSW, PhD, a licensed psychologist who provides psychotherapy, career life transition coaching, couples relationship coaching, executive coaching, and speaking. Dr. Mincer is a founding member of the Retirement Coaches Association, a contributing author of several books published by that association, and the co-creator of the Certified Professional Retirement Coach Designation and Training Program. And she is co-author of the Couples Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for creating an amazing new life together with Roberta Taylor. So all 46 of us, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Dorian for joining us here this afternoon. And Dorian, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Robert. I'm delighted to be here. As Robert mentioned, my computer has gone kind of belly up, although it's going to be fixed. So I don't have my slides that I'm able to use. And I also am not as comfortable with the iPad in terms of chat and everything, but just hang in there with me and I think we'll be fine. So today we're going to talk about the changing landscape of retirement and what's next in terms of work and in terms of your life. We're going to discuss some of the kind of what the longevity revolution is, myths of aging, normal shifts that happen as we get older, process of change and the transition process, well-being, which is connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning. I'm going to stress that a whole bunch of times during this talk. 21st century strategies for work and some ideas about the strategic process and tips to stay resilient during your job hunt. So I can't see all of you there, but I welcome all of you here. And you know, many of you, and I know that Robert has had many wonderful speakers for you. We're in the midst of what's often called the longevity revolution, as he mentioned in the introduction. We're living longer and we have what are called bonus years. And it used to be thought, and I'm saying this now because of the way ageism works, it used to be thought that by the time we were like 62 or 65, it was really all downhill. And there's a major paradigm shift that has occurred. And now, as you know, he mentioned in the introduction, you know, we have these bonus years, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years past the normal retirement age, to be able to be vital and connected and part of life. So that it's not like a longer old age, but a longer kind of middle age to work and do whatever we want to do. A dear friend of mine, Jan Hively, who's 90, says meaningful work, paid or unpaid, through our last breath. And that's with the idea of connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning. Now, I know many of you are in a situation where you're retired from your job, not necessarily by choice. Some of you might be, some of you It may have been mergers or layoffs or whatever's been happening, particularly or exacerbated by COVID. But as Robert said in the introduction, not working, being retired from your job does not mean being retired from life. And it is important to really keep in mind that you're not working or looking for work is affecting you individually, but it also impacts anybody in your life. If you're in a partnership, in a marriage, your family, friends, siblings, we're not alone in this. And it's important to keep that in mind. There's certain myths about aging that I want to talk about because they relate to the dilemma that often people over 50 face in trying to look for work. And I mean, there's no question ageism is alive and well in our society. There are other societies where people older are revered. It's not really existing in our society. And I know from what Robert said, some of you may be 50 and older, some of you may be younger than 50. I think what I'm offering today and some of the suggestions are relevant regardless of your age. But I do think it's important to think about some of the myths of aging and to really think about not internalizing them, because I think what's so difficult is often we internalize, it's a sense of kind of denying our future self. We're all going to age and get older if we're so lucky. And, we may age with chronic illnesses, we may age with physical illnesses, we may age with mental illnesses, but attitude and mindset has a big difference. So some of the myths that I just want to kind of throw out a little bit, but you're going to hear them or, hear of them out there. One is, you kind of can't teach an old dog new tricks. Not true. And there are many research items that relate to all of these myths. Older people learn. Older people want to learn. Older people have curiosity. And it's really important to recognize that. Older people are very resilient. The myth is that older people aren't resilient. There have been studies during the pandemic saying that actually older people have done better than younger people because we've gone through ups and downs of life before. And so you sort of know that things are going to work out. I mean, I think one of the populations really hardest hit with the COVID has been people in their 30s and 40s and maybe late 20s who've had children at home too, and having to negotiate the changing work arena as well as homeschooling children during the time. Another myth is older people are set in their ways. Again, older people, from my experience, want to learn new things and are curious. We're not on a downhill trajectory, as I mentioned before. Another myth is that older people are slow, less productive, and not quality oriented. Again, research shows otherwise, that actually, the sort of historic knowledge, the wisdom and perspective that older people have, younger people don't have. There's usually less turnover, more steadiness. Some people say, you're not out partying so much and, able to be at work the next day. And I know I'm saying work as though it's an office, but that has changed dramatically during COVID. And some of what I'll be talking about is really the importance of thinking about remote work. Another myth is I'm nobody if I don't have my work identity. And that one's a hard one because for many of us, that's been such a major identity in our life. But I think it is helpful and important to think about, in addition to your work, what are other parts of your identity? It might be as a partner, as a parent. You might have hobbies, you might have interests. We're more than our work identity. That's the doing part of us. But there's an inner part of our life that it's important to recognize too. And it's important to think about and develop. And this is a good time to do it. If you're kind of looking for work now, if you don't have hobbies and interests, try to think about developing them. Try to think about, kind of just lighting a little fire under yourself to help you feel good and confident about who you are as a person And that will help in your job search. Another myth is older adults aren't tech savvy. It's not true. There again are studies that show that, older adults, are comfortable. Many of them, I won't say all, many are comfortable with technology or willing to learn. And that's an important area because I think technology is one of the hot kind of employment areas. And if you're not comfortable, it's important to learn to be comfortable to whatever degree possible. I mean, I, in some respects, consider myself kind of technologically illiterate, but I'm really not. I am, but I'm not. It's sort of this mixed kind of thing. I know how to use technology, but I also know how to ask for help when I need help. And I think that's a sign of strength rather than a weakness. So in addition to myths of aging, there also are midlife shifts that happen as we get older. And just think about yourself. Often there's a question, who am I? If you're in a relationship, who are you? Who are we? I mean, I can look in the mirror and say, oh my gosh, who is this person? I look like my mother, but it is me, and needing to own it and try to help ourselves present in our best possible way. I know screen stuff isn't, lighting and all, there are different ways of dealing with it, but needing to feel proud of the who we are. I'm a believer that 70 is not the new 50 because that's still sort of highlighting youth. 70 is the new 70. Like I'm 76 and I'm proud of it because I have 76 years of life experiences. My husband's 90. So many of my friends are in their 70s and 80s, but I also have a lot of friends older as well as younger, including my son, our son. And intergenerational connections keep you young and vital. There's often a changing definition of success. So think about this for yourself. I'm not sure we're ever free of how others evaluate us. And there's no question in the world of work, our bosses or people in authority, we do care that we make a good impression. But I think as we get older, there's what's called a shifting of a locus of control, so that instead of totally being dependent on people in the the outside world, we begin to trust a little bit more in ourselves and our inner standard of success. And I think this is important, again, no matter what your age, whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it's important to know that you're doing your best. And that's the best that you can do. I'm not a believer in the word perfect. I think doing the best you can and feeling good about it. And that will come across to people, sort of a growth mindset, that you're capable, that you can do things. We can't change past events, but we can change the meaning we put on them. Now, I don't know what your situations are on why you're looking for work now. Again, it may be by choice, it may be by life circumstances. We can't change it, but the story we tell ourselves can really impact how we move forward. There's a book I like to mention. It's called Life is in the Transitions, Mastering Change at Any Age by Bruce Feiler. He's not a clinician, but much of what he says really resonates with how I work with both people in therapy as well as in my coaching practice. We can't change the event, but we can change the meaning and the story. Some stories hinder us. If your story is you're a victim to the world, that sense of victimhood is going to go forward. But if you can look and assess and recognize maybe your part in the situation and what's happening around you, your story can change and you can become, the hero of your story and change the story. The other part I like about what Bruce talks about in his book is he talks about disruptors in life. And certainly not working when you want to work is a disruptor. And he also talks about life quakes, sort of like earthquakes. And there could be these major changes that happen, but it's how we come out of it, how we deal with the transition, how we transform, that really makes a big difference. And so I think it's important to kind of think about that. I like a framework that I find helpful, particularly when people are looking for work. I'm going to talk about a little framework of change and also a framework of transition. There's a psychologist, sorry, out of Rhode Island called James Prochaska, Prochaska. I particularly like his model of change because action is actually the fourth step. Because I know sometimes when you're looking for work, you know, you or other people around you can say, well, why don't you just do such and such and such and such? And it can feel demoralizing. We really want support during this time of life. So he talks about pre-contemplation, the first stage when things are just bubbling in your mind. You want maybe you're still working and you're not happy with your work, and you're just thinking, I kind of want something to be different. Or you've been laid off, or whatever has happened in your situation, and you don't really know what to do, and you're not really thinking clearly, but it's something's bubbling and you just know something has to change. So that's pre-contemplation. And then he talks about contemplation, when you're actually really thinking about it. Like, I know I need to get a job. I know that in the 21st century, maybe what I was doing isn't necessarily going to be what's going to be there for me, but I know I want to do something. And you begin to really concretely think about it. And then comes the preparing. And I think, coming to seminars like this is part of the preparing, being part of a support network, thinking about what are your skills, what are your strengths, what are the things you want to do? If you could create kind of an ideal situation, what would it be? Where are there potentially gaps in what and what your skills are and what the market needs now? That's the preparing. And then comes the action, so that with the preparing, it may be interviewing other people, it may be networking, it may be writing a resume or writing your story about your work, or writing about your accomplishments. Then's the action, and then the maintaining it. I find it helpful, and it's not linear, so it can go back and forth. So if you're discouraged, and if you're feeling like, why can't I do such and such, maybe you need to think about it more, or maybe you need to prepare more, and then begin to think about the action. And it is really helpful to set little steps. If you start feeling overwhelmed, generally that's because it's just too big, and you need to break it into kind of little steps, because you want to have a sense of mastery. So those are important kind of things to keep in mind, and to realize that there may be these other steps in between. I mean, maybe you want a full-time job, but it may be important, particularly in our economy, and we're still not 100% past COVID, but the gig economy, or part-time work, remote work, consulting, the over 50, 55 is the fastest growing segment of people becoming entrepreneurs. So it's important to stay engaged, maybe even volunteer during this process. Help yourself feel connected and engaged and having a sense of purpose, because that's going to come across as you're looking for a job. And in particular, keep a sense of humor. We need to laugh a lot. Watch funny things on television. It can be despairing sometimes with some of the stuff that's going on in our world. It's important to keep perspective and to try to keep a sense of humor. I like the term optimistic realism. So you want to be realistic of what's out there, and what your skill set is, but you also want to be realistic. So optimistic realism. I now want to mention a little about transition. And I want you to think for a minute. I think I won't, since there's so many people on the call, I'm not going to ask for interaction at this point, but looking for a job is a transition. Retirement, even if it's by choice, it's no longer a destination. It's a journey, it's a transition. And all transitions have an ending. They have a period of unknown, often of uncertainty, or sometimes called a messy middle, and then a new beginning. So I just want you to take a moment and just think, Do you have more trouble as you think back on transitions in your life? Going to school, maybe getting a job, getting married, getting divorced, widowhood, not getting married, having children, any transition. Do you have more trouble with the end, with the period of unknown, or with the new beginning? With all of it, none of it? It's helpful to think about it because that may help you have a better sense of how you're dealing with this transition right now. So think about it. With all transitions, there is a sense of loss, a sense of needing to give something up in order to open the space for something else. And again, in your case, it may have been a choice, but it may also have not been in your control. And then sometimes it's worse, even when it's worse or feels more difficult, because it can affect your feelings about yourself and your self-esteem. But either way, there's some grieving. And the interesting thing is when people actually retire, often people don't understand that maybe there's some grieving because it's supposed to be, oh, you're supposed to be so happy or you have this free time. Often it's thought of as disenfranchised grief because people don't understand it. And if you're not working and you want to be working and you're looking for work, there is grief. And it's important to know it, not feel alone with it, not be ashamed of it, but to know that it takes a while to process and to begin to deal with perhaps your anger, perhaps the way it's impacted your self-esteem, perhaps comments people may be thinking they're being helpful, but actually they're not being supportive, and needing to have often difficult conversations, starting with a kind of an I statement of, I want you to know that I need support from you right now. It's not helpful for me when I feel like you're putting me down or telling me I'm not doing enough. I really need you to really respect that I'm doing the best I can and, working at it as hard as I can. We often need to have those kind of difficult conversations and use I statements and try to avoid you statements. You statements, even if they're intended with love, can be blaming and shaming. So if somebody says to you, you're not trying hard enough, or you haven't done such and such, again, you might take a breath and just say, I could hear it better if you say, I'm worried about you, or I'm concerned, on kind of how you're approaching it, or I'd like you to just ask me how I'm doing rather than make assumptions about me. So I'm kind of leaving right now change and transition, and I want to get into well-being. Well-being, as I mentioned before, is connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning, and meaningful relationships, a sense of your own agency, effectiveness. So think about when you were working, in what ways did work help your well-being? And in what ways did it perhaps not? Generally, work provides a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Pre-pandemic, it often was time together, time apart if you're in a relationship. Generally, it provides self-esteem, camaraderie, sense of community, a sense of making a difference, purpose, and meaning. And I do know that, some of the community feeling has shifted somewhat during pandemic, but in general, well-being and also active parenting. I like to see the parallel of active parenting. When our kids are little and we're involved in active parenting, it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning, community, self-esteem, connection, engagement, purpose, and meaning. So when you're not working, it is important during this transition time to think about how would you build that into your life now while you're job hunting. What will get you out of bed in the morning? What will give you a sense of connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning? It may be, and what kind of little structure do you need, to kind of get the day going? I think, we all need a little of it. It doesn't have to be the way it was at work, but to really recognize that you want to try to keep your well-being as, buoyed up as possible, because you want to present yourself at your best as you're looking for work. So that's where the gig economy or volunteering or part-time work or taking classes, I think becoming a lifelong learner, is really important. This may be a time to really be able to think about what are some of the things you still want to learn that might make you more marketable perhaps in another area. So try to think about building that in your life now, and think about having what's often thought of as a growth mindset, that you want to believe in yourself, and you want to, and a way of doing it is to also think about what are 3 to 5 things you're really proud of that you've done in your life, and why. You want to buoy yourself up in relation to it. Research, I always like to provide this little bit of piece of information. Research says that by the time we're 65, now many of you may be younger than that, but by the time we're 65, it's 30% genetics and 70% lifestyle choices, like exercising our body and brain, good nutrition, spirituality, taking care of ourselves. So what I like to say to people is, if you're younger, start building that in now, if you haven't already, because these are parts we can control. And right now, in this job search, there are a lot of things that are probably feeling out of control. So I encourage everyone to think about controlling the parts you can, and taking good care of yourself is one part of that. So now I want to talk some about some of the strategic steps that I think can be helpful here in the 21st century. I'm influenced by a colleague friend of mine, Carlene McKay, and she and Brad Taff have written a book, Plan B for Boomers. She's written a few different books, and she talks about 7 steps that I like to think about. The first one is called letting go. And letting go is, really, if you think about it, sometimes we have to unlearn messages from the past. Work isn't going to be the way it was like in the 20th century. And I don't know how long you've been at your particular job, but it might be that jobs now aren't going to replicate what you had before. Some might. I'm not making that as a blanket statement, but I think it's important to recognize that the world of work has changed, and it keeps changing. And I think the pandemic, constantly is changing it. The whole, remote work, hybrid work, office work, consulting. It's important to recognize that the world of work has changed. And so the letting go of thinking that it's, you're going to get a job that totally replaces what you had before might be holding on a bit to a pipe dream. And again, it depends on the industry and field you're in, because it may be very possible, but a lot of industries are changing. So letting go is the first. Letting go of some assumptions that you have, letting go that it's going to be just a repeat of what you had before. And then what's called an internal analysis. What are your qualities and your skills? What I like to have people do is, you might want to make a list of all of the skills going way, way back to even your first job, delivering newspapers or whatever, working as a cashier or whatever your job was. What are the skills? And you're, working your most recent job. What are the skills? And really try to operationalize them. What were the skills? What ones were you good at? What ones were you good at, but you'd rather not transfer if, you have your druthers? What ones weren't you good at? And maybe they're important skills to have. So this might be a time to kind of buff it up a little and maybe take a class or learn something so that you can become more marketable. There's also thinking about what are your character strengths. When I work with people, I often have them it's a free assessment. If you Google authentic happiness, it will take you to it, but it's authentichappiness.sas.upenn.edu. And you have to sign in with your email, have a password, and scroll down to questionnaires. And there are a bunch of really, interesting questionnaires. The one that I recommend is called the VIA, Values in Action, Signature Strengths. Don't try to second guess it. Just answer the questions because a few of them are asked in multiple ways. And then you'll get your top 5. And I think there's still a place where you can ask for all 24. For some people, it may be just confirming what you know about yourself. For others, it often can be kind of this aha experience, like, I hadn't thought about that as being a strength. And if you happen to still be working and are thinking about making a job transition, you may want to think about, am I able to use these strengths in my work? Might that be why I wasn't happy with whatever job I was in before? Because I really couldn't use my strength. And it may help you clarify a little bit of what you're looking for so that it can be sort of resonate more with the who you are and how you can really bring your full self to the job that you're doing. So look at your qualities, look at your skills, think about your character strengths. The third strategy that Carlene and Taft and Brad talk about is marketplace trends. Some of you may know how to get Google alerts. You go to Google, and I think somewhere at the top, there's a place where you can put in like the industry you're interested in or what the job is, and you can get alerts when articles come out. It helps you kind of stay on top of what's happening in the particular field or industry that you're interested in. And also looking at Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a good place. AARP, another good place where they have lists of sort of what's going on, what the marketplace trends are. Because one of the important things I think in the 21st century is to think about what's your skill set, what's needed in the marketplace, and are there some gaps? And that's often called the gap analysis. So, maybe you need a little bit more technology help. Maybe, you discover that you're really interested in a certain field, and you look at people who are working in those positions like at LinkedIn, and you begin to get a clearer vision of what are some of the things that might be helpful to learn. And there are so many now online courses that are free, some that cost. You might need a certification, or you might just need to just learn something so you're current, and can also impress the prospective hiring managers, that you really, want to keep learning, and, you've discovered that this is something maybe relevant for this particular job that you're, looking at, and that you took it upon yourself to learn more about it. What are the hot opportunities? What's hot today may be cold tomorrow. I think the aging population is a hot area. Physician's assistants, occupational therapists, technology, the green industry. Again, stay current and alert to trying to understand what's out there, what your skills are. You might be overqualified for some things and you may not be. The other thing is really recognizing that, and this is a hard reality, that you may not match the salary that you had before. So that it is important. And I say, no matter how much or how little money you have, it's helpful to talk to a financial advisor, particularly one who's what's called holistic, where it's not a number per se, but it's how you want your money to work for you. Because then that will help you know how much you need to earn in this next job. And maybe it will be less than, what you were hoping for, and maybe not. I mean, again, it depends on what industry you're in, what your skill set is. But I just want to sort of provide some kind of optimistic realism, though, but also realistic situation that if possible, it's good not to be 100% driven by the money, so that it can be something you can do well and work at and feel good at. And of course, it's really important to earn money too, particularly if you know you need it, and we're living longer and we don't want to outlive our money. So then it's also looking at what the different options are, what the different industries are, and what are the challenges and barriers. That's the gap analysis that I've mentioned a few times. Um, if you learn something new, would that help you? Would it help you be more marketable? Even just learning some new hobbies might just help you approach things in a happier way. And that can come across, because sometimes some of the job interviews are, tell me about other things you like doing. And sometimes, there can be a nice conversation about, liking to hike or liking to walk or liking to exercise or, you know, I know a lot of people often say travel, and I know that's, I mean, I guess people are beginning to travel again, but that's changed a lot during the pandemic. And then your plan. And probably many of you have heard about SMART goals. You can look on the internet. It's SAMRT. So it's specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, time framed. It really is helpful to try to have goals that you can achieve so that you have that sense of mastery, and hopefully it can lead to being able to find a job that you're looking for, or a job in the transition. I mean, it might be that you're still looking and you want to be able to work full time. But again, as I've said before, you may need to consider a part-time or a few part-time jobs or, projects or something. Not necessarily the easiest thing to make work, but, working, staying in the game does also make you more attractive to people. So the important thing is to be as kind of connected and vital as you can be, so that you don't get so disheartened and lose confidence and faith in yourself. And then the marketing toolkit, which are, having a business card, being sure you're on LinkedIn. I know I've seen some of the announcements. I think you've had different speakers talking about LinkedIn, thinking about kind of new ways to write your resume. You don't need to go more than, like 10 years. You don't need to kind of load it with things way, way back in the past. There can be descriptions, some stories, tying together what you've, achieved. Less, just kind of listing. There is age discrimination out there, although there are a number of companies that are, are getting better at realizing that older workers really provide a lot. The perspective, the wisdom, often you've got, the historical knowledge about certain industries. You want to believe and present your best self. I think it's really important. So it is, I mean, I know I've said a lot. A couple other things I want to just say, and then I want to open it up for questions. There are different ways different things to think about being resilient and kind of to puzzle out things for yourself. So I do think it's important to think about, what are 10 things that make you happy and why? Who was with you? What made them, be happy? Sometimes you can think of it as a kind of a peak experience in your life. As you reflect on your past, what are 3 to 5 things that you're really proud of and why? What are 5 losses of things that you're going to miss if you're thinking about, leaving the job, or that you already miss? But what are 5 gains that you're already allowing yourself to think about as you begin to go forward? The key is to try to focus on the positives as much as you can. It's so easy in our just way of thinking about things in the world. It's easy to magnify the negatives and minimize the positives. I'd like to suggest the reverse. You really want, as best you can, to really focus on the positives about yourself, on what you have to offer, on what your value added is going to be. And it's hard, if you've lost a job, it can feel very demoralizing. it's important to recognize that maybe what you have to do is grieve, but then think about, what do you have to offer? And I would bet that there's a lot of good things that you have to offer, but it takes some time to do some of that internal work, to really feel and believe in yourself. So I think I'm going to stop there and just take some questions. And then I have a little poem I'm going to end with. But before I take questions, I want to mention one thing. I just don't want to forget to mention it. On the fourth Tuesday of each month, except for December, I do a free webinar that's open to professionals and the public. It's called Revolutionize Your Retirement to Create a Fulfilling Second Half of Life. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, the 25th, I'm interviewing Carrie Hannon, who's a financial expert, journalist. She's written many, many books on job searches. Tomorrow, she's going to be talking about her more recent book, which is In Control of Your Work, 50 and Over, but it's relevant for any of you that are younger. She's terrific. I've interviewed her a few times in my program. And it's now been 10 years of programs. So to celebrate the 10 years, I now have weekly podcasts. So you can actually go to the Revolutionize Your Retirement radio podcast, and you can hear a number of other situations with Carrie Hannon. You need to sign up at www.revolutionizeretirement.com. So www.revolutionizeretirement.com. You sign up with your email. It's not a video, it's just audio. So you can either be on your phone or the internet. Questions only can be asked on the internet, though. And so you can be on phone and or internet. But once you sign up, you will get the information. And if you can't be there at noon live, once you sign up, you get a recording link after the call. And if you have any trouble with that, you can, oh, good. I see that Robert put it in the chat. So www.revolutionizeretirement.com. If you have any problem, you can email me, dorianmincer@gmail.com. But it's free. Just sign up and you'll get the recording link after the call. So it's Tuesday at noon. And as I said, there's the whole podcast series that you can go back to and hear, many different topics that you can listen on whatever podcast platform you listen to. So I'm going to stop now. There was more I was going to maybe say, but I think I've said enough. Let me open it up to questions. And then, as I said, I'll end with a poem.
Well, Dorian, you practice what you preach. So when you talk about, myths about seniors not being tech savvy and quote unquote can't teach an old dog new tricks, here are you with a podcast. I'm very impressed.
Oh, right. Yeah. And it's been 10 years too.
Yeah, that's incredible. You were an early adapter. That's awesome. So folks, if anyone has any questions for Dorian, please type them into the chat. And I will allow people to unmute, but why don't we stick with chat questions first? Okay, so let's see here. Marie asks, what was the Revolutionize Retirement on the fourth Tuesday of the month? And Dorian, I know you just spent a few minutes on it. Dorian, if you want to send me additional information, written information, I can include that in the email that I send out tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Okay, but if you want to just briefly again touch on Marie's question.
And you can still sign up tomorrow. It's the fourth Tuesday of each month at 12 noon, except for December. So there won't be one December, but it's every single month, fourth Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern time. You do have to sign up each time though. And once you sign up at www.revolutionizeretirement.com, once you sign up, you'll get the information to call in and or be on your computer. If you want to ask questions during the call, you do it through the event page, and then you'll get a recording link after the call. And also, once you sign up, you'll get announcements for the upcoming ones to remind you to sign up, and you'll get information about the podcast series. So the fourth Tuesday of each month except December.
Great, thanks, Dorian. So if anyone has any other written questions or comments for Dorian, please get them into the chat now. And Dorian, I'll ask, so you presented lots and lots of information in about 40 minutes. What's the one big takeaway that you would like people, if there's one thing people take away from this talk, what would you like it to be?
So I think the one takeaway is believe in yourself.
Mhm.
I know you're going through a really difficult time. It's hard when it feels like things are out of control. So I think it becomes important to think about what are things in my life I can control. And I think thinking about that, and I think being able to really recognize the importance of connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning. If that isn't part of your life now, even during this transition, I really encourage you to think about what are some things you can do that will help you feel engaged, connected, with a sense of purpose and meaning. It can be walking your dog. It can be with children, grandchildren, nieces. It can be taking a lifelong learning program. It can be, taking a course and learning a new skill or developing a new hobby. To remember that you're more than just your work identity, and to control the parts you can. I think that to me is an important part, and to think about a growth mindset, that it's important not to give up on yourself. You want to surround yourself with people who are supportive, not people that help pull you down, and to focus on things you're good at and that you're proud of, because it's easy to lose sight of that, if you've lost a job.
Excellent. Kathy essentially asks, I think you referenced a website on how to evaluate your character traits. If you don't have that handy, Dorian, can you email that to me and I'll send it out to the rest of the group?
But I can just mention it too, but I'll also send that to you. It's authentichappiness.sas.upenn.edu. And I think if you just Google authentic happiness, actually, it will take you to that website. They now have a positive psychology program that's at the University of Pennsylvania. And the questionnaires are through that. Oh, good. You put it in the link there.
Yeah, you're testing my spelling today. And I don't know why it's not hyperlinking, but yeah, I think I got it in there. Yeah.
Okay. And I will send a few of those links to you. Yeah. Carrie Hannon actually wrote a book about, I think it was called Working from Your Pajamas. She wrote it during the pandemic, which has a lot of links about remote work. I think on the podcast too, when you go to the podcast, if you look at the podcast links for Carrie Hannon, it will take you to the event page. And I think there was a handout that she had made available then about remote work. In her new book, she also has a lot of resources. There are so many things. I mean, I keep learning every time I look at one of her books. I mean, there are so many different things about remote work in different agencies and ways to learn about market trends. And she really does focus on a lot of those things. So come to the talk tomorrow and ask a question. The best question is judged by me is going to get a copy of the book. So that'll be incentive to sign up. So.
I wish I could incentivize people to ask questions. I need to come up with prizes. So folks, I don't see any other written questions or comments. Did anyone want to unmute and ask a question of Dorian via audio? And to do that, you can just rate. Okay, Cindy, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. So I just Googled it, the Authentic Happiness. It's a book and it's a...
Nope. Okay, go then. Authentic Happiness questionnaires. Let me just look real quick. I think it's authentichappiness.sas. Let me just try it right here. Let me just try Authentic Happiness and see how it comes up. And then I do want to end
Yeah,
Yeah,
it says it's a course or questionnaire.
Okay.
questionnaire.
yeah.
It's a questionnaire.
Okay,
So it's authentichappiness.sas, Sam, Alice, Sam, .upenn, U, uncle, PENN.edu.
test,
And if
then
you,
test center.
it'll say authentic happiness, revel in happiness, scroll down past the book, down to questionnaires. And then it
Yeah, I
says
see
get
the emotion
started.
questionnaires. Is that what you're referring to?
So there are a lot of emotion ones. The one I'm referring to is called VIA, Values in Action. Let me just find it here. VIA Survey of Character Strengths. So if you scroll down, there's a whole list. It's way toward the bottom.
Yeah, I saw it under questionnaires. And then
Yeah,
you have to get a password, a login.
Yeah, you just have to sign in with your email and then choose a password and just remember it, because you can go back and take the tests again.
Now, what does this do for you?
So it's a questionnaire that will give you the top 5 of your character strengths. It may just confirm what you know about yourself, or it may sort of be an aha. Oh, I hadn't realized that's a strength. I think there's still a place where you can get all 24 of your character strengths. And the ones at the bottom don't mean they're way at the bottom, because some of them may have, tied up, in between, but it just gives you a sense of these are strengths and there may be ones you want to develop. It's a way of the internal analysis, sort of a little more of self-awareness.
Right. Okay. I'll try it
Okay.
then.
Okay, give it a try.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Cindy.
Sure.
A couple of questions in the chat, Dorian, as I suspected. Folks are wondering if you can send along the PowerPoint as a handout.
I will do that. I have to wait until I get my computer back and my hard drive back in it. So
Right.
it may be a few days.
Yeah.
But I will then send a handout to Robert.
Sure.
My computer's back today, but I have to have a computer person put my hard drive back in because I didn't want to lose all my data and everything. So, so anyway, so I want to end though. I do have a little poem I wanted to read, if that's okay.
Yep. Oh, yep. Go ahead. And folks, as Dorian reads the poem, feel free in the chat to let her know if you enjoyed today's presentation, and we'll wrap up in just a few minutes. So go ahead, Dorian.
Well, before I do the poem, there's one other little self-reliant thing that it's something I have all my clients do. So I want you just to, all of you, if you will, just close your eyes for a minute. And I recommend doing this. Well, I'll tell you in a minute, but I'd like you to close your eyes for a minute and take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for about 4 or 5 seconds and then out through your mouth. And another deep breath in through your nose. And as you exhale, silently to yourself, say, relax. Take another deep breath. And as you exhale, just silently to yourself, just say, act, don't react. And take one more deep breath and silently to yourself, just say, be present, be focused. Feel your own inner strength. I recommend this to all my clients. I've been doing it my whole life, my family, my son. When I would sometimes get anxious in traffic, he'd say, Mom, breathe. It centers you. It's like counting to 3, but I like the breath. I would recommend making this part of your practice. It just centers you once an hour if you can, or some people say it's better at time of transitions. Just center yourself. You're going through a lot of stress now. And, it's not a panacea, but it helps to just center yourself. So I do want to just end with this poem that I happen to like, since I'm talking about this being a time of learning about yourself and questions and all. It's by Rilke, who's a German poet. So again, just close your eyes for a minute while I read it to you. Be patient toward all that is unresolved in your heart. And try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms or books that are written in a foreign tongue. The point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without even noticing it, live your way some distant day into the answers. So don't be afraid of the questions. Live them now. Be curious. The poet was Rilke, Rainier Marie Rilke, Rilke. It's from Sonnets to a Young Poet.
And Dorian, what was the name of the Carrie Hannon book that you mentioned? A couple people were asking about that.
In Control of Your Job at 50 Plus is
Something
the
we'll do.
newest one. I think that's, I don't have it right in front of me. The other one that, oh, here it is. In Control at 50 Plus, How to Succeed in the New World of Work. That's her new one that she's going to talk about tomorrow. One that's, I think, on the podcast already, or if it's not there, send me an email and I can send it. Another one is called Work in Your Pajamas or something like, some
Right.
title like that, which
Yeah.
is all about remote work. And that was
Right.
during the COVID.
Gotcha.
And she's written a number of other books that really are like for people 40 and older in terms of work. Another one is That's Never Too Old to Get Rich, about becoming an entrepreneur.
Good, good. All right, well, we'll wrap it there, Dorian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being a trooper and presenting without your computer. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And folks, next Monday on Halloween, we're going to meet at 2:00. We're going to have Randall Warniers, who used to run the Acton Networkers Group. He'll be here to give his presentation called Creating an Edge to Land Your Next Job. So there'll be information about that in the email tomorrow. And then in addition, the Tewksbury Library, along with about 9 other libraries in the state, collaborate. And on the first and third Wednesday mornings of the month, we have a networking group for folks who are 50 and over. So that's probably perfect for most of the folks on this call. And there'll be information about that in the email tomorrow as well. So thank you all so much. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. And again, look for an email for me tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Dorian. Have a good one.
Take care. Wish everybody also healthy, happy job search. Take care.
Thank you, Dorian. Really appreciate
You're
it,
welcome.
even without
Thank
a
you.
computer. That was spectacular without a computer. It's really difficult on the iPad sometimes.
Thanks. Take
Appreciate
care.
your expertise. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.